Yeah, and I think that holds true for a lot of the partners that we have. So Leah, my next question is, so if accountants are kind of, if they're rising to the occasion, at least as far as your expectations are concerned, what are some areas, like what has surprised you about them? Like what have you learned that kind of I don't know, you didn't expect at all?
Yeah, I think the thing that shocked me most is probably typical of anyone who is getting to know a group of folks on a deeper level than they had ever before. I think that once you get to know a group of people more deeply, you understand just the breadth of folks that are not just defined by a single choice in their lives, such as their profession. And so it always amazes me just the variety that exists within the accounting and bookkeeping profession, and even at work, how they choose to run their practices. Like you all have said, there's a whole spectrum in terms of whether firms tend to take a more old school approach or whether they tend to take a more progressive approach and really want to put best practices in place to create a great place to work and to create that work-life balance. What industry they decide to focus on, services that they offer, business models that they use, really what drives and motivates them. I've done some interesting interviews with accountants during my time here, and it's really just surprised me how vastly different the motivators are. They all really want to serve their small business clients, but what's at the heart of that desire for service can vary quite broadly. So I think that's really what surprised me most, is just the breadth, the variety, and that it runs the gamut.
Yeah, I remember when I first started my practice, I remember sitting in front of someone, and they were trying to acquire my accounting practice, and basically said by the end of the lunch, what you're doing is not going to work. This was early days of the cloud, like 2011, maybe 12, maybe 13. That's when things were starting to get really kind of crazy and wild west online. But the motivators that really drove him to say something like that versus the motivators that were driving me to run my practice were drastically different. But yet we were doing the same thing. We were trying to help clients. We were trying to help small business owners run their practice, run their businesses, help them survive during tough times. This was shortly after the Great Recession, where I think a lot of technology was starting to be looked at because of that whole experience. And but yet we had different motivating factors, where it's like, okay, look, you want to advance your practice, sounds great, but it's not going to work, because I've been in the profession for a long time and I kind of know what works as far as what sells and what doesn't sell. But you're absolutely right. I think the motivators across the board are just so drastically different, and it's almost like a changing of the guards at the moment. So it's really interesting to watch.
Will, I have to say I'm a little fascinated by this. Did this person not believe that the cloud was a thing, or what was where was their skepticism?
Yeah, no, yeah, I think that was absolutely it. I had been reached out by a local firm that was probably about 20 minutes north of where our office was. Mm-hmm. Older firm, been around for quite a while. I think they were probably trying to find people to groom and do some sort of succession planning, have us take over maybe over the next 10, 15 years. But then as we kind of laid out our own vision and where we see the industry going and how we see clients really wanting more and small businesses really needing more, and that, our role was to be better accountants, not just the status quo. And that being a professional, an accounting professional, is a journey and not a destination. He looked at everything that we were doing and the technology that we were using and the way we were communicating, and just made the judgment call that said, hey, that's just not going to work, because that's not what clients are looking for. But yet, the way they were approaching clients is actually what clients are also not looking for. So like, it was really interesting place to be. And I actually still touch base with him, and he's like, how, I remember before I came over to Gusto, talking with him, and he's like, congrats. I saw that your practice did really, really well. And I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, took a risk, but it paid off.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very interesting. So Leah, one thing that we were curious to get your thoughts on, you're a product marketer. And so I think maybe our people in our audience don't necessarily know what that means, but essentially what it means is like, you work with engineers and you work with product managers to kind of, to essentially give people what they want in a product. And I'm trying to not just focus on Gusto because there's product marketers of all kinds.
Yep.
But what you specifically focus on is Gusto's technology and its platform and what it does specifically for accountants. So what we're curious is, having learned what you've learned over the last year, and kind of just like I said, being immersed in accountants for this amount of time, where do you think where is technology really serving accountants well, in your opinion? Number one, and number two, where is there still some work to be done, and what do you think your work is going to entail over the next 12 months?
I think technology gets slightly better every day. And that's not just technology for accountants, that's technology that we all use. And I think that right now there's a very interesting conversation going on in the profession about what is the role of technology, what is the role of automation, what's the effect that that's going to have on the accounting community. And we've seen certain companies like Scale Factor not understand the right balance between people and technology. And they've believed that technology will play such a strong role in the client relationship that there is not a need for the people part of the equation. And I think that that's exactly wrong. I think it's actually a balance, and a balance that is potentially, tipping in the scale of technology, but can't do so overnight, nor should it, because there is such a strong role for people to play in the equation. And when we see businesses underestimate that, they don't perform well. And we know that actually, if you think about the cohort of business owners that are kind of coming into the business today, millennials that are starting businesses, they really want not just someone who can keep them compliant, someone who can save them money on their taxes, someone who brings that really strong financial acumen that we know that accountants and bookkeepers bring to the table, but they also want a really solid business advisor that is great to work with, that does use technology in a way that makes the relationship more seamless and that just makes their lives easier. And so I think that we've underplayed the role of people and the role of those soft skills. And I think we need to recognize that that's a key part of the profession. And the more that accountants can lean into that, the better that they will do. And they can lean on technology in some ways to do that. And it actually makes life quite a bit more fun. If you can find a way to serve your clients in a way that they want to be served and they're really satisfied with, it's so much more fun to work with a client who is engaged and happy to take your call on the phone than one who might be dreading your call or not necessarily looking forward to catching up. So I think that that's a good lesson for all of us, really, in what anyone is looking for from a client-firm relationship. They want someone who's easy to work with and someone they want to jump on the phone with. So I think as much as firms and accountants can keep that top of mind as they think about ways to utilize technology to better automate and build in efficiencies to their practices, not to lose sight of that human factor.
Yeah, I think that's so spot on. And, for you to not be in the profession as far as traditionally or conventionally, right, being an accounting professional prior to coming to Gusto, but coming to Gusto to help solve real problems and pains in the profession, and for you to pick it up that quickly just really shows how far the profession has come. That someone could, come in and understand that nuance, because that nuance is very thick nowadays. It wasn't as thick, 10 years ago, but it's very noticeable now. And to your point, we have proof points like Scale Factor and other situations where we played up technology too much and didn't realize that the profession really is an interwoven experience of both tech and people. And it'll never be anything other than that. And if you lean one direction too hard versus the other, then you're probably doing something to the detriment of your client.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, I think we have to stop it there. But
Yep.
Leah, it was so great having you on. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the office at your desk right next to us someday in the future.
Likewise. I can't wait to get back into my my real accountant sandwich, not just the virtual one I see myself in right now.
Well, thanks, Leah. Thanks for coming on, Leah. And we'll see you next time.
Sounds great. Thank you both.
Oh man, that's so good. And for me, Caleb, and this is always really exciting. For those of you who are watching and that are in the profession, it's always just exciting to be on the cutting edge, and just really excited to have even Leah on our team to build real solutions that speak to there are problems that the profession has. And for me, that's just really, really exciting.
Yeah.
But
she's
yeah,
good, she's good people, that Leah.
she is good people. She's smart people too.
Yeah, she is.
But speaking of smart people, we have Patty Doyle who's going to join us. So let's invite Patty Doyle, who's the CEO of Rummy Spice, to the show. Thank you, Patty, for being on. Fun fact about Patty, by the way. Fun fact, she worked at PepsiCo. I kind of want to talk about that because I'm a big Coke fan, but I don't know if that's offensive to Patty or not. But sometimes I go to restaurants and I'm like, can I have a Coke? And they'll say, is Pepsi due? I'm like, not really, but I'll take it. But Patty, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here.
So we're friends on LinkedIn. I was kind of looking at your background, and I saw that you have just a crazy impressive background. Graduate from Notre Dame. Was your degree in? It said applied mathematics, and so when you were going to getting your degree, what were you thinking you're going to be when you grew up?
I thought a little bit less about what I was going to be and more about what I liked doing. And luckily my mom and dad were like, yeah, you get that degree, do something that you can learn. And they were pretty okay with it. But I started off as a business major and I took one accounting class and one econ class. And I was like, ooh, what's happening here? And I ultimately had always liked numbers and liked, equations and all that other good stuff before STEM was the thing. And so I just sort of followed that path, but it still led me on a, sort of really good trajectory for life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I know we always love to hear a good origin story, and I believe, Caleb, that's where we want to probably start for everybody who's watching. But how did you end up at Rummy? How did you just even end up in the career that you're in, and the career trajectory that you were hopefully shooting for that you landed in?
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly the sort of even jumping off point of math and numbers, I started my career more on the market research side, which is actually a really good fit, right? A lot of analytics, digging into data at a time when it was pretty manual, right? Do big printouts, dig through it. Mm-hmm. But most of that was in sort of the consumer packaged goods and food and beverage industry. So I really had a big love for that. And eventually went back to grad school, checked the MBA box and studied a little more marketing and finance there, and came out on the other side and I did what I always refer to as sort of big food. So I started at Kraft Heinz, was there for many years. I worked on businesses like Easy Cheese, Stovetop Stuffing, Minute Rice, a lot of good brands that I think folks know. I took a leap from there over to PepsiCo, did a stint working on sort of health and wellness there. So think of some of their more wellness driven brands like Quaker Oats and things like that, which was a good transition. And then ultimately, having done a lot of big company roles, took the leap into a lot of smaller, mostly private equity backed food companies where, for me, it was taking a lot of those really good skills that I built up and, being able to apply them a little more directly. And so most of my career had been at marketing until I was sort of ready to put the fancy hat on as the CEO. And so I've now been at Rummy a little over a year and took over from our founders in August of last year as they each chose to step away from the business and to now get the sort of joy and pleasure every day of running this awesome spice company.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's a really great story. I'm curious about what is it to come in to succeed a founder. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because that's a big milestone, I think, for a lot of companies, for an outsider coming in. So tell us about how that relationship occurred. How did that happen? And how did the founders place their trust in you and say, yes, this is our person. This is the person we want to lead this company now?
Yeah. So, I think honestly, just about everything good that's happened in my career, it was networking, right? So meeting folks, connecting with people. I very rarely have said, oh, here's a job listing that I'm going to post for. And this is how, that doesn't happen, sort of probably this level and probably not as much these days. But I happened to meet one of our board members. He was in town for a board meeting and we had a mutual connection through my grad school. So he knew somebody up at Northwestern. And so that was really the start of the dialogue. And, from there it was, much like anything else, meeting the rest of the team, having those conversations, and getting to know them. So I think, in one regard, it was sort of here's where I'm at, here's where the company's at, and a little bit of the dance, as it were, right? But then I think to your question and comment about what it's like taking over from founders, or how does that work? I think, sort of not being the founder, you have to, I think in certainly in my case, love the mission and have that same belief. And it doesn't mean it might not change as we grow and continue to scale the business and things like that. But I think it's really being excited about inheriting that, as it were. And so I feel that way about Rumi. I mean, I love the food industry and obviously have had a sort of long run there, but to be able to work in it and then inherit this amazing mission, to try to make an impact with what we're doing, to me is sort of the perfect fit of that. So hopefully it's more like continuing on the legacy that they started.
Yeah, and so for our audience, can you go into what Rumi's mission is? I think it's really incredible, and it's a great story. So can you tell us more about that?
So we are, first and foremost, a spice company. But what that means for us is to ultimately find and source some of the most beautiful and high quality premium spices we can out of Afghanistan, which is a bit of a unique place to source product from. But with the goal of really making sure we're supporting the agricultural economy in Afghanistan. And so what that looks like is, one, working with a network of farmers that know they're part of our supply chain and growing saffron, which is what we started with and now have expanded our portfolio, but growing product that's going to support what we're doing. And so that means having like a really tight supply chain. So we're not going through a lot of middlemen and other partners and things like that. So really, as much of what we are investing to get product is going as directly to them as possible. And so that's one way. And then the other way, when we talk about how we want to make an impact, is we've not done the count because we're actually in harvest season right now, but I would guess that we're probably above 4,000 women that help support some of the harvesting, but also a ton of the processing that happens with the spices. So especially with saffron, if you think about it, these are individual flowers that have to be harvested out of the field. And then each one has 3 saffron threads that have to be pulled out of it and then dried and ultimately prepared to come here. And so we help provide a ton of opportunities for the women to work as part of our harvest. And it's really meaningful because when they're part of our processing, they typically earn 40 to 50% more than they would with other jobs that they're, even eligible to have. And so, obviously they're a country in a little bit different stage of development. And so knowing that it's not just creating some of those jobs, but also doing it in a way that's making a meaningful impact in their income is a really important part of how we go to market and what we believe in.
Yeah, that's really incredible. If no one's visited rumispice.com, that's where you would want to go and find out more information. But just, perusing what the mission is just really exciting. I mean, you're giving, obviously, the company is economically impacting that area very drastically, and that's a great baton to take. Right. Yeah. And it's a great baton and a great legacy to continue to leave in that area, to leave for those who are part of the company. How big is Rumi? Like, how many people run Rumi Spice, as a company?
Yeah. So there are 7 of us, here in the States. I'm based in Chicago. A majority of the team is here. We've got a few remote folks. And then we have one lead partner who is over in Afghanistan that really handles a lot of sort of our on the ground relationships there.
That's great. Now for you, I mean, obviously looking at just your career pedigree, I mean, like going from big companies like Pepsi down to something, let's say like Rumi, it definitely screams that you were definitely really about the mission and just the vision of it all, considering probably from where you came from as far as like the more conventional corporate background, or probably just the corporate experience of corporate life, right?
Definitely. I mean, I think it's while it's certainly a very different scale, different number of people and how we do things, I still think there's first of all, for me, there's so many lessons or learnings or things like that from other parts of my career that I then get to take forward and put into what we're doing.
Right.
The flip side of it is it's also then saying, hey, we're small enough that we can think about doing things differently, or it is a little bit more turnkey because, we can yell across, well, when we're in a standard office, we can just yell across our co-working space and say, hey, how's this working out for you? And so, there's to me like sort of goods on both side of that equation that work. Or even, the example is this morning we were sort of revisiting what we have planned for, obviously, Black Friday and all of the cyber activities, a huge part of our sales coming up. And so, looking at some of the content and emails and things we have going out for that, and we can still do that this morning without putting too much, stress or pressure on the system. So
yeah, gotcha.
So Patty, I'm just curious it's to have, a team of 7 and then, but also to have this global supply chain and this global operations, like what has been the most, I guess it's easy to just ask what's been the most challenging thing during the pandemic, but really, yeah, what has helped you like focus on your core business? Because it is kind of, it's atypical. Like what you guys do is not how a typical small business runs, or even some very large businesses. So how have you been able to focus on your core business, and what lessons have you learned along the way, and what are you still learning?
Yeah. So I think in terms of, focus, I think it's just deciding what sometimes those most important things are. A woman that I used to work with, she turned me on to this podcast, and it was about, I'm going to get the name a little bit incorrect, but it's about letting small fires burn. And it was sort of a great lesson in saying, when you are small, there are things happening everywhere, and you can't deal with them all. Like, we can't respond to every piece of negative feedback we might get on a product review or things like that. But it's saying, what can we do that, to the point we talked about earlier, supports our mission and supports ultimately selling, so we can support that mission. And so, really trying to look at everything through that lens of making trade-offs so that you're ultimately doing what you need to for the business and the mission is sort of what drives me. And it's as simple as sometimes just, start of the week, I actually have a hold on Monday mornings to just say prep for the week. So I think about what those things are. And if I need to sort of push some of that through the team or engage with people, it's really doing that at a high level. And, certainly there's some things, yes, we all have little things that come into the equation, but it's trying to think about that each week and decide what those things are to maintain that level of focus. So I think in terms of driving business focus, that's really how I tend to think about it and the lens I put things through. And then, okay, remind me just real quick your next question.
Well, just what learnings have kind of emerged over the last several months, and what do you find yourself, what's still fluid? Like, what are you still figuring out?
Oh, if I said everything, is that too much? No, but
not at all.
I think over the past few months, for me, and certainly maybe sort of like a little bit of like a juxtaposition against my just personal style, it was really about the fluidity of everything we were doing. And so as much as people could look at us and me and say, hey, you're sort of a scale up, and so isn't that the nature of what you're doing? And while it is, I think the past couple months especially have taught us all about just the breadth of being flexible, and so whether that's rethinking even for us, like where we were doing some of our production, right? We happen to have, a facility in the US that helps us package sort of like the last stage of a lot of our products. But there were some cost pressures there. And so it's saying, okay, in the middle of a pandemic, can we rethink this? And can we actually do some of that back overseas? And sort of being okay to both rethink things and try that flexibility, and then try to do it with everything we've all had going on. And so it's, I think just being open to reconsidering everything, and not to just upset the apple cart for no reason. That's not the point, but to say, hey, is this creating new ways we can think about things right now? And maybe it's short term, right? Maybe this is just what we do to get by these next 6 to 18 months, hopefully a lot less than that, as we go through this, but trying to think about what that looks like. I mean, for us as part of the food supply chain, it's been, quite a bumpy ride for, like grocery orders and things like that. And so it is just, I think, leading with flexibility more so than we ever have before.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Caleb, I think we're probably getting to the end. I don't know if the visual's available, but we'll try to throw it up. But if you've not heard of Rumi Spice, please visit rumispice.com. That's RUMI spice.com. They have some great. I was actually just looking just for my own personal order here, but they have some great holiday spice. Love the passion of just Rumi Spice, for like, the 3 pillars there. You cultivate peace, right? You empower women, and then you deliver those premium spices, to people who really, really enjoy it. So they have some great holiday gift sets that you can buy for families and for loved ones, obviously all at a safe distance, and really celebrate the holidays feeling well about what you've purchased, rather than probably the next gizmo, which is where I land. But Patty, thank you so much for your time. Really, really amazing stuff that you guys are doing at Rumi Spice.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today.
You're very welcome. Caleb, hey.
Yes, sir.
Another week down.
Yeah, we did it. And it's, it's kind of a holiday show.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty light, great topics, great things to hit on. Hopefully people out there are having a safe holiday, of course, right? Keep things to a minimum, but it's an interesting time.
It's an interesting time.
But real quickly, I actually forgot to mention about Gusto's partner program. So for those of you who have hung on all the way to the end, I'm gonna throw a little zinger at my production team. But if you want to cue up that video, we'll try to tell you a little bit more about it. But if you really want to expand your advisory services, there we go. If you really want to expand your advisory services and offer your clients more value this end of year, because end of year's here, Gusto is that people advisory platform of choice for modern accountants. So we make it easy for accountants and bookkeepers to onboard, pay, and insure and advise their hardworking clients and teams when it matters most. But better yet, you can actually get People Advisor certified through the payroll industry's first ever certification program. And as a people advisor, you'll learn to combine financial expertise with people-focused guidance to better serve clients. So you can partner with Gusto today, introduce your firm and your clients to better people operations and more at gusto.com/get certified. That's gusto.com/get certified. Caleb, always great to see your face, my friend.
Yeah, likewise, Will. But we don't do this alone. So now we're going to do some credits. This edition of On the Margins Live was produced by me and Will Lopez, written by me and Will Lopez. Our co-producers are Mohini Kundu and Andrea Garcia Vargas. Video and sound production by Waylon Janowick and Ryland Harris. Graphic design by Paul Choi. Thanks to everybody for watching. Have a safe holiday. Will, you have a safe holiday.
Thank you, sir.
The next edition of On the Margins Live will be December 8th. So we'll see you then.
All right. See ya.